The streets of Tel Aviv, bustling with life, are filled with a distinct sound, one that may seem out of place in this Middle Eastern city. As you walk through markets, coffee shops, and even office buildings, you hear it. The unmistakable rhythm of Tagalog. In a country where Hebrew and Arabic are the primary languages, Tagalog has slowly and quietly been weaving its way into the social fabric of Israel. It's not just the occasional greeting or a few borrowed phrases. This language has become something of a lifeline for a community that has, in recent years, transformed from a small, invisible minority to one of the most visible and influential immigrant groups in the country. But what is behind this phenomenon? Why is Tagalog, a language spoken by millions of Filipinos, becoming Israel's second language? This is the untold story of how a foreign language is reshaping the narrative of Israel and how Filipinos are influencing its culture in ways many don't realize. The roots of this story begin in the 1990s, a period marked by significant shifts in Israel's labor market. As the country's population grew and its economy expanded, a growing demand for low-wage workers arose, especially in industries such as agriculture, construction, and caregiving. Israel turned to foreign workers to fill these gaps, with many of them coming from Eastern Europe, Thailand, and the Philippines. The Filipinos in particular stood out because of their work ethic, their adaptability, and, perhaps most importantly, their proficiency in English. In a country where many workers don't speak Hebrew, the ability to communicate in English made Filipinos an attractive choice. However, what began as a pragmatic solution to a labor shortage soon turned into a deeper cultural exchange. Filipino workers quickly found themselves not just living alongside Israelis, but becoming part of their daily lives. Filipino caregivers, in particular, played a central role in the lives of elderly Israelis, forming bonds with their employers and their families. Over time, these relationships transcended the professional sphere, and Filipino workers started to learn Hebrew, while Israelis began picking up Tagalog words. It was a mutually beneficial exchange that, in the quietest corners of Israeli society, was slowly creating a bilingual population that could easily converse in both Hebrew and Tagalog. But this process wasn't without its challenges. Filipinos faced significant obstacles upon their arrival in Israel. They were often treated as temporary workers, their status as foreign nationals keeping them at arm's length from full integration into Israeli society. They lived in cramped accommodations, sometimes far from their employers, and in the early days of their migration, there was little opportunity for community building or social mobility. Despite these challenges, Filipinos remained resilient. They formed close-knit communities, often centered around places of worship. Filipino migrant workers, most of whom were Catholic, found solace in the churches and social clubs that provided a sense of home far from their own families. These spaces became breeding grounds for cultural exchange, not only among the Filipino workers themselves, but also with Israelis who would come into contact with them through religious services, charity events, and social gatherings. As these communities grew, so did their presence in the public sphere. Filipinos became more visible in the media, especially in Israeli news outlets that began to recognize their contributions to society. They weren't just low-wage workers anymore. They were teachers, nurses, and small business owners, all of whom contributed to Israel's social and economic fabric in important ways. Yet despite their contributions, they were still relegated to the margins of Israeli society, their stories rarely told outside of the context of their labor. It wasn't until the rise of the internet and social media that the Filipino story in Israel began to gain traction. Filipinos, especially the younger generation, began to use social media platforms to share their experiences, build solidarity, and document their lives in Israel. This shift in how they told their own stories made their experiences more visible to a wider audience, including Israelis who had never interacted with a Filipino worker. Suddenly, Tagalog phrases, memes, and songs became part of the digital landscape of Israeli culture. Filipino youth, many of whom had grown up in Israel, were also becoming fluent in Hebrew and were now speaking both languages with ease, creating a new cultural hybrid that blurred the lines between being Filipino and Israeli. Yet even as their presence was becoming more prominent, there remained a sense of distance. Filipinos, despite their growing numbers, still faced systemic challenges. Many still had limited rights, especially in terms of long-term residency or citizenship. The Israeli government had strict laws regarding the status of foreign workers, often viewing them as temporary visitors rather than permanent residents. The result was a tension between the cultural integration that was happening on the ground and the legal barriers that restricted Filipinos from fully participating in Israeli society. However, the shift was undeniable. Tagalog was no longer just a language spoken by a small group of people. It was becoming a bridge between two cultures. Filipinos were teaching Israelis their language, and in doing so, they were introducing them to aspects of Filipino culture. Filipino cuisine, music, and traditions began to seep into Israeli life. For example, Filipino food became popular in Israel's urban centers, with Filipino restaurants opening their doors to locals curious to taste new flavors. These establishments served not only as places to eat, but also as cultural hubs where Israelis and Filipinos could interact, share stories, and learn from each other. The music scene also saw the influence of Filipino culture. Karaoke, a beloved pastime in the Philippines, became a favorite activity in many Filipino households, but it soon found its way into Israeli bars and clubs. Filipino pop stars, many of whom sang in Tagalog, gained a following among Israelis. Tagalog songs, once foreign, were now being played on the radio, and Israelis who had never set foot in the Philippines were belting out Filipino ballads in their living rooms. Another significant aspect of the Filipino-Israeli cultural exchange is the growing number of mixed families. Filipino women, many of whom came to Israel as caregivers, have married Israeli men, leading to children who are bilingual and who identify with both Filipino and Israeli cultures. These children represent the future of the Tagalog language in Israel. They are the bridge between the two worlds, blending the best of both cultures while continuing to pass down their heritage through language, food, and traditions. Yet, the question remains, why is Tagalog gaining such prominence in a country like Israel, a country that already has a complex linguistic landscape? The answer lies in the unique relationship that Israel has with its foreign workers. While many immigrant communities have historically faced integration challenges in Israel, the Filipino community is different. Israel has relied on Filipino workers to perform essential tasks that many Israelis either cannot or do not want to do. This reliance has fostered a level of mutual respect and understanding that is not always seen with other immigrant groups. As Tagalog spreads, it is also a testament to the perseverance of the Filipino community. Despite being seen as outsiders, Filipinos have managed to carve out a place for themselves in Israeli society. They have not just been passive participants in Israel's labor market, but active contributors to its culture and economy. Their language, once confined to small, tight-knit communities, has become a symbol of their resilience and their impact on Israeli society. In the end, Tagalog is becoming Israel's second language, not just because of the growing number of Filipinos in the country, but because of the way these workers have embedded themselves into the very fabric of Israeli life. Through their work, their communities, and their culture, they are rewriting the narrative of what it means to be a foreign worker in Israel. It's a story of migration, adaptation, and cultural exchange, one that is still unfolding. As Israel continues to grapple with issues of immigration, labor rights, and cultural integration, the Filipino community will play a crucial role in shaping the future of the nation. They are not just workers, they are teachers, caregivers, entrepreneurs, and ambassadors of a culture that, once foreign, is now as much a part of Israel as any other. The rise of Tagalog as Israel's second language is more than just a linguistic shift. It is a symbol of how far Filipinos have come and a glimpse of the increasingly global and multicultural Israel that is taking shape.